Hello, I am so happy to have you with us today. And today we're going to interview Reverend Dr. Alma Stevens. She is recently retired after 38 years of being the senior minister at the Inner Light Center for Spiritual Living. I'm so happy to have you, Alma. Thank you for being with us. And I would like you to tell us your story of your beginnings and how you found Science of Mind, etc. So just tell us your story. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Marilyn, for this privilege. It is my privilege to share my experience as a CSL minister, as a former CSL minister, and I can't say former anyway because I'm continuing to speak in centers. I spoke in the Center for Bridges of Wellness yesterday, and I do speak twice a month at the at a center that is not a spiritual center. It's a spiritual center. It is not Science of Mind. It is not CSL, and we are just it's forward a globe. A practitioner who I trained took the space that we were holding our service, and she has continued by bringing in guest speakers each week. And she asked me to support that idea, to continue to share, to be able to share, and it is my privilege.
Well, thank you. That's wonderful, Alma. And that's how we also get the Science of Mind principles around the world, is through other organizations that we have the privilege of speaking to the people in. So tell us about your family when you were young, and how many siblings do you have, and tell us about where you were born, where you were raised, and how you found Science of Mind.
Well, I was born Alma Marie Smith, in Clearwater, Florida, October 17th, 1937. And I had there were four other siblings. I am the last remaining one. My brother made his transition in April of this year. So I can carry the Smith family on. I completed, of course, the basic education, and I had two children, which I raised partially by myself and with the family. And at 35 years old, I decided that I wanted to change the course of my life. And I was introduced to Science of Mind in 1960. And I decided in 1961, after attending the services each week, that I would join under the auspices, or senior ministry at that time was Dr. Norman Lundy. And I have not stopped at any point of attending a spiritual center or studying as a matter of fact. I began taking classes in 1972 after a retreat in Oklahoma City. I had some spiritual experiences, is the only way that I could describe that, which led me to taking the classes. I took the classes under Doctors Ben and Frida Winter. You know them. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the class, she asked if I wanted to be a licensed practitioner. And I said yes. I went through the class And when it came time for licensing, Dr. Hubert Turner said in his review, practitioners are responsible for the souls of man. And I could not go any further. I did not feel that I was capable of dealing with the souls of mankind. So I continued to study different studies, different explorations. And in 1975, I decided that I wanted to go to school because I did not understand how I could not have a headache when I was having migraine headaches. Dr. Winter, Frida Winter, I call one of my first teachers, said, "You don't have a headache," because she knew who I was. I didn't. And I became angry. And I said, she doesn't know what she's talking about. So I must learn science of mind. And at that time, the only school available was in Los Angeles at the original church.
Yeah, the Institute building.
Institute, yes, the Institute building. And I packed up, stock, lock, and barrel, left the property, children, everything, and I went to school in Los Angeles. I completed, that was in 1977, completed the courses, and I came back to Miami. I was living in Miami at the time, and it was my desire to go to Washington, D.C. and to organize to found a church in Washington, D.C. I got there and I found a place to live. I signed a contract that I did not sign a contract. I filled out a contract for a house, but I didn't sign it. I came back to Miami to sell a piece of property so I could pay for the property in DC. And during that time, Roger, what is Roger's last name?
Roger Teal?
No.
Roger Tulane?
No, I'll think of his last name. Okay. I'll think of his last name. Roger was the minister, Reverend Roger was the minister at the Miami church.
Oh, okay.
And he asked me to assist him. That was in November until while I was in town, because I told him that I was going to found a church in Washington because we didn't have one, and I thought we needed one there. In the meantime, the closing of my house was supposed to have been in October, and that's when I went. I married my son, and I stayed, and the closing did not take place until November. And that was when he asked me to become the assistant minister of the Miami church. In January, they fired him, and I was the only minister. And this was in 1980. Dr. Lundy was the guest speaker each Sunday because of the climate in Miami at the time. But I taught all the classes. I attended all of the meetings. I was what was called the assistant minister, and of course we weren't being paid for this. I simply wanted to serve. I wanted the experience of a church, and I stayed there until the Science of Mind, what was called then Science of Mind Center called me in Hollywood, Florida. I moved from Miami, Florida into Hollywood, and I stayed at that church until I retired. We moved, we had fun, we had four splits during the time, member splits, and I started the church. I never stopped. I have walked into my service or walked into our meeting place, and there were only one person. Then there were two, and I kept going every Sunday, and we would have three, and then we have one, and then we had four, and then we had six.
Quite a challenge for you.
It was quite a challenge. It wasn't a challenge for me in that I didn't feel that it was a challenge for me because I felt that I was called to lead. And I did not know as much, of course, as I know now. And I understand that was just the commitment, the part of commitment that we have to make, regardless to who shows up and who doesn't show up. We have to show up. One Sunday, I walked in. Our services started at 11 o'clock. I walked in at I was always at the center an hour before to see that everything was in place. And at 10 minutes of 11, no one showed up. So we were in a strip mall. I walked out on the parking lot and I said, if I am to be the minister, tell me. If I'm not supposed to be the minister, I want to serve. Tell me where I am to serve. I walked back in at 5 minutes of 11, and I looked around. There was not a soul. And I said, well, what am I to do? And my heart said, start your service, spiritual mind treatment. I started with the spiritual mind treatment. There wasn't one person, not one seat. And at that time, we had a membership of 80 people. When I looked up, when I finished the prayer, there were 18 people sitting in the seats. Mm-hmm. We continued. That just inspired me to continue. I thought at one time that I was not serving as I could or as much as I could. So I decided that I was going to quit. And before, I had not told the congregation how I felt. So I walked in that morning and I said I opened the service, said the treatment, and before I could start my message, and I was going to tell them at the end of the message, a member of the board said, wait just a minute, Reverend, we have something for you. And they presented to me, I'm sure you remember when they made posters of Ernest Holmes' pictures.
Yes.
They presented me with Ernest Holmes' picture. And of course, that took care of my resigning at that time. We continued. There were many people who came and many people who left, of course. And at one time, I stopped counting. I would just show up every Sunday. And at another time, I felt that I wasn't serving. I wasn't in my right place. And I was going to announce at the end of the service that I was resigning. And just before my message, I was one of the members in the center did stained glass, and he had made a stained glass plaque of the symbol and presented it to me. So I said, okay, I give up. I am not quitting. I'm not going to stop until I drop. Fast forward, I continued through the years. We had to move from place to place. And of course, each time we moved, we lost membership. I still showed up every Sunday. And in the 38 years, we only closed the center one Sunday. I called the members, and that was during the hurricane of Andrew, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Um, that was the only time in 38 years that the doors were closed on Sunday morning. Of course, I felt good. I felt good about that. As a minister, I enjoyed my work. I did not want to be a minister. I never wanted to be a minister. I wanted to teach science of mind because, as you remember, I told you I didn't think the teacher knew what she was talking about when she said I didn't have a headache. So I wanted to teach science of mind, which required that I had to study day and night, weekends. And there were times during that time that I did not sleep from to Monday to Sunday. I would I would work in the daytime and study all night, and I would do it alone. And I stayed in there, and I chewed, and I cried, and I think I did some I think some unchoice words came from me because I could not understand who I am. I continued. I was attracted to a congregation in my last years of ones who dearly loved me and appreciated me. During that time, the idea of diversity came out. My congregation has been primarily uh, Caucasian, Colombian, Mexican, Guatemalan, Gulf Guatemalans. That has been basically my congregation, the mix of my congregation. So when the idea of diversity came out, I had no problems. I had no problems with that because we were one family. We were one spiritual family, and I saw each one as a spiritual being, as a perfect human being. And as a result of that, when I retired in 2017, I have I had students who came up who said, "Well, you might not be in the pulpit anymore, but you will always be a minister. You will always be a teacher. So what day can I start taking classes with you?" As a retired minister, of course, you know I cannot teach science of mind classes. And so I asked, "What kind of classes do you want to take? It doesn't matter. You think of something that will help us help me to realize that I am a spiritual being." And I came across a study, and it was a study for me some 20 years ago called The Right Use of Will. And that is a study of eight, eight books. And I studied the books. Sometimes I had students, sometimes I didn't. But that is basically what I'm studying or what I'm teaching now, right use of will, and how our will, the will of the human being, is expressed through feelings. I do believe that that book has inspired me to write the prayer books that I am writing. Now, I write for the listserv or the love serve. Each month, I send a prayer. And based on the books that I'm writing, they are prayer books, which does not replace spiritual mind treatment, for we need spiritual mind treatment. But I felt that we needed to learn how to pray in order to realize what we are asking for, how we're asking for it in spiritual mind treatment. It doesn't replace spiritual mind treatment. It simply helps us to realize how magnificent we are. And as you know, Dr. Holmes wrote that we call forth the opposite words in order to heal the error thought. And my prayers are based upon the highest words that we could find. Well, I have been working on that idea, working from that idea since 1987. When I began writing prayers, I just began writing prayers. I wrote about 500 prayers between 1950s, 1986 and 1987. Fast forward, when I began to write these prayers, I had forgotten that I had written those prayers all those years. But one one morning, I was, to be exact, January 1, 2015, a client called, and a student, actually a student, and she was talking with me, and I heard myself say, "Alma, you are depressed." I knew I didn't feel my old self, but I didn't know what it was, and I had never claimed depression before. And and when I heard myself say, "You are depressed," because of what she was saying, after we hung up, I went. My heart said, "Write a treatment." So I wrote a spiritual mind treatment, and I wrote that treatment, and I felt uh, so much better then, of course. And another thought came to me. Well, why don't you just write a book of prayers? And of course, I'm going to argue with myself. Well, I don't know what to write. Um, just sit down, take a piece of get a piece of paper and pencil. And I did. I said, now what? And I have that kind of relationship with myself. And the idea, the format for the prayers came from when I wrote the prayers 20 years ago. I'll just stop this. And as a result of writing that one prayer, I said, well, what is the name of the book? And every day I would sit down to write a prayer. I had an impulse. I had this passion to write these prayers. I would write until 11 and 12 o'clock at nighttime. I would sleep, and it was though I would sleep maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, and I'd get up and I just wrote these prayers, eating, writing prayers. For for I had written 27 prayers before my answer came as to the name of the book, because I ask every day. I'm that kind. I will ask a question until I get the answer. And I kept asking, well, what shall I call this book? What is the name of the book? Write the Prayers was all that I got. Write the prayer, write the prayers. After 27 prayers, in about 10 days, my heart said, the name of the book is Heal Your Body and Your Mind Will Heal. Hence, I have printed or published 3 copies of those books. Is there any way you can stop? I printed or published book 1, Healing Diseases, calling forth the opposite of the disease, in 2015. In 2016, I published the second book, Healing Feelings.
Hold it up and turn. There you go. There you go. Heal your mind and your body will. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
And in 2017, I printed book 3, Heal Your Mind and Your Body Will Heal. Healing Fears. You can see that now.
Yes, I can see it. Thank you.
Healing Fears and Phobias. Understanding.
Okay. And how can someone purchase one of those or all of those books?
The books are on Amazon, Balboa, Barnes and Nobles, and of course, I sell them.
Of course, wonderful. Wonderful.
And I have given many away. My my purpose for writing the books is to help us to face our feelings for which we run away from. We're only afraid of our feelings, our images, and our thoughts. And I know because I am one, I have ran away from my feelings as everyone else because of the misinformation, because I didn't know who I am. And since I have written these books, I have healed much of my shadow side. I'm continuing every day to continue to heal the ideas which have blocked me or which have limited my expression of as a human being.
It's wonderful.
I have published 3 books. I have written 6 books,
Oh,
and I plan to publish one each year for the next 6 years. And I am now editing the 4th book, which is on the prototypes, as Dr. Holmes called them. Psychologist calls it archetypes and the shadow side. And I thought with in spiritual mind treatment, we deny what we do not want and affirm what we want in our prayers. What I'm doing in our prayers is that I'm including what we don't want as well as what we want to balance that energy as my understanding of science of mind, of the teaching of science of mind.
okay. So how do you see the future of science and mind principles being taught around the world? Do you have something that you would like to say to the people watching this interview?
I received my doctorate in Bible study because I wanted to understand my relationship with who I am. And I have come across many of the ideas or concepts in scripture where I think that science of mind or the teaching of science of mind will continue. It will always be. We will always be around because there will always be people who need to understand who they are. And, and we say science of mind is the study of this the study of being. And I understand that when that idea came out, of course, it came out in the last 10 years, as you know, when I was in the ministry for a long time, we just simply say science of mind, and the new breed brought in the science of being, and I thought about it, and as I went back to study, and of course I continue to study science of mind. The study of being is the study of the human being, and when I when I when I think of the the quality of teaching of spiritual for Center for Spiritual Living or Science of Mind, if you will, I see it as always we will always have a need for it. There will always be those who will need what we have to share. And I applaud my colleagues, my esteemed colleagues, for continuing, those who continue each week. I have been because I am writing and writing prayers. I do not miss the ministry because I'm still in the ministry. I will always be in the ministry as a light bearer or as a teacher of light. So these signs of mine as continuing as I see ministers of today as the forerunners, as we were 100 years ago, of those who coming behind us. And we know now that what we say shapes our life and affects the way we live. So the teachings that we have will always be out front. And there will always be those who will carry the light. And this is why I feel as close to CSL or Science of Mind, if the teachings of Science of Mind, if you will, as I do, because I know it's a lasting, I call it medicine for the soul.
Thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Alma Stevens, for being with us today. We certainly appreciate your time.
It is my privilege. Thank you. Thank you much.
Hello, my name is Marilyn Leo. I am the founder of the Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation. I trust that you have enjoyed this interview, which is part of the Wise Sage project of the archives. It is a gift of love, as is the foundation itself, and depends entirely on your generosity. We appreciate your donation in support of the preservation and availability of our Science of Mind history.